Good afternoon, students. Welcome to the Analyst, dated 29th of December 2023. Today, we'll look at 5 important articles from the Indian Express and the Hindu. The first article will be Qatar Espionage case. Then, we'll look at Pegasus Spyware. Then, we'll look at Ayushman Bharat scheme and the Black Sea, and finally, the Red Sea, which are places in news. Let's start with the first article, that is the Qatar Espionage case. Now, before we go ahead, I am requesting you to attempt this particular MCQ and give me the answer. So, how does Qatar's role in GCC contribute to India's energy security? GCC is Gulf Cooperation Council. Now, what do you mean by energy security? Let's say in my colony, I have a single shop, right? And from that shop, I can buy my oil, I can buy my gas. Single shop, right? Now, because of some reason, because of some family reasons, that shop shuts down. So, where will I get my energy from? So, to ensure that this doesn't happen with a country would hedge. It would find multiple sources. It will create a multiple supply chains to source its oil and gas, so that if there is any tantrum, if there is any global tantrum, some chaos that is happening in the globe, so our energy needs are not affected. Why? Because all the citizens will need the energy to run through their daily needs and their daily life. Now, when we are looking at the espionage case, so what has happened, what has transpired behind this commutation of sentence is that there were 8 Navy, I would say ex-Navy soldiers. So they are veterans of India. So they created a company called Al-Dahra Global Technologies. So this particular company was operating in Qatar itself, right? And these military men, they are from India, but they are ex-military men. So after their retirement, they are working to create a company which is working in military services itself. So the role is that they are supporting, let's say, the Qatari naval force. They are helping in terms of procurement of stealth submarine. So a state can be involved in, let's say, defense forces, but there are many companies which operate, which help, which aid and abet the forces. So they were working in Qatar in terms of their naval forces, supporting their naval forces. But because of some allegations of espionage, that means they were breaching some confidentiality, or they are alleged to leak some information, critical information, and because of that they were giving a death sentence. Now, this death sentence created furore in India. There were a lot of debates on this, and there were talks of how to save them from this death sentence, including using international forums, including using diplomatic channels. Now, recently, what has happened is that their sentence has been commuted. That means reduced in terms of from death penalty to simple imprisonment, right? And they were at times placed in solitary confinement also. Now, this brings us to the question of what kind of relationship do we share with Qatar and how important is Qatar for India. Now, the friendly relations have been there for decades, but they were given a push under the Prime Ministership of Manmohan Singh in 2008, where we went for defense agreements. Then the Emir of Qatar, he visited India in 2015, followed by the visit of Prime Minister Modi to Qatar in 2016, and multiple visits from Minister of External Affairs. Now, the bilateral trade, the bilateral imports, it stands at $16 billion. And 50% of this import is LNG. That simply tells me that Qatar is very important for India's gas imports. That means, that also means that this gas import will not only be important for power sector, but it will be important for the fertilizer sector, right? And it also tells me that Qatar's importance is there in India's energy mix and energy security. So all those important points are there about the imports of energy from Qatar. Now, what do we export? So we export only around $2 billion, and it is mostly water exports. It is mostly water exports. What do I mean by water exports? So look at two countries. Let's take a macro perspective. So you have Qatar, which is oil rich, which is gas rich. So a lot of petrodollars, a lot of petrodollars. Simultaneously, India is a capital starved country, a capital hungry country. We need more and more capex, capital expenditure. We need new ports. We need redevelopment of ports. We need expansion of airports, new cities, new airports. We need investment in transmission lines, into road infrastructure. That requires long term gestation funds. So, what Qatar has? It has petrodollars, which is kept where? It is kept in various pension funds. It is kept in various, let's say, long term investments. So can these investments be channeled into Indian markets? Can the Qatari royal family, can the sovereign wealth of Qatar be invested? Can the pension funds be invested in Indian companies, in Indian startups, in Indian infrastructure development? The answer is yes. So we are requiring low cost capital but long term capital, and Qatar has low cost and long term capital. So it is a win win situation. Secondly, such countries which are oil dependent, in the scenario of changes towards electric vehicle, in the changes, the global debate about climate change, all these countries which are part of the GCC or the Middle East, they are vying to shift their economies which are more oil centric towards, let's say, a diversified economy. And Dubai is a very good example where they have divested away from oil towards, let's say, tourism, towards other activities. So Qatar would also like that, to invest in sectors of the world which will have potential to grow. So it's a win-win partnership. But what India is right now doing, India is exporting its water. How? Because Qatar also happens to be a region which is desert. So if you are in a desert prone region, if you are in a dry arid region, you do not have water, you do not have drinking water. So how will you have water for agriculture? So you would like green leafy vegetables and you would like meat, because all of that requires a lot of water. From India, from Bangladesh, from this entire region which is agrarian in nature, that is South Asia. Now, if you look at the political significance, because energy security again is part of India's long term security interest. And one part that we discussed in example was that we want to ensure that a gas comes from Qatar. Simultaneously, we would also hedge our bets. We will place a hedge that if Qatar fails, I will have another seller. And parallelly, I will also try, and we are talking from the Indian perspective, so we will also try to move away from oil and gas so that we are more Atmanirbhar. So the three processes, they operate simultaneously, and it is not a zero sum game. Now, when you are looking at political significance, if you have petrodollars and you have, let's say, $500 billion, $800 billion, $1 trillion, you have in the region companies like Aramco, you have the major kingpin called Saudi Arabia. So you have bigger countries with petrodollars loaded with resources. Can you even try to go against them while you are trying to rise towards 5 to 10 trillion dollar? So you would avoid going against them, and you will always want them behind your back, supporting you. Why? Because you are going towards growth. Everyone knows you are growing, but you are capital starved. You need capital. So can the entire region be a source of capital for India? So it is in India's interest to not make enemies from these regions. Now, if you want, this is one perspective, but if you want to sit on the high table, you want global leadership, if not the top, but amongst the top for, let's say, the few decades. So, do you want a seat on the UNSC? Yes, you want a permanent membership. So, do we need the support of the GCC? Do we need the support of Qatar? Do we need the support of in the entire Middle East? The answer is yes. Why? Because we have an enemy called Pakistan, which will always try to meddle in India's internal affairs. And even if Pakistan would never grow itself, but it will always try to become a hurdle in India's growth. Now, to give you a perspective, the combined GDP of Pakistan is maybe, let's say, $200 billion. And today we are standing at $4,000 billion. And our cities like Mumbai, Delhi, they are clocking $200 billion. So that is the differential in terms of economics that we have with Pakistan. But again, it is a growth irritant for India. So what it will do, it will hedge its own bets, its bets on Kashmir. It will try to create ruckus along with China. So China funding Pakistan through CPEC, and Pakistan becoming a cheap soldier to hit India. A cheap soldier, a soldier on hire, right? So now the Pakistani government, they will always try to have good relations with GCC, with OIC, and will like some countries of GCC or OIC to issue some statements on Kashmir to put down India. So, do we need the support of each and every member of GCC OIC? The answer is yes, and we'll keep on trying on that. And we also want our energy security. We want the support of the entire region for our push for the UNSC permanent seat. So Qatar becomes important. Now, when you are looking at the community that we have in Qatar, it is 8 lakh strong, and it is a very important source for inward remittances. And we know by this time that the money that is coming from, let's say, the Middle East and from the entire world is more than $50 billion yearly. And India is the largest. India gets the highest amount of remittance from the world. And this is happening for the last 3 to 4 years. So remittance sources cannot become our enemies, right? This will affect the 8 lakh Indian immigrants who are working there. Now, when we are looking at the defense and strategic cooperation, India and Qatar have signed a defense cooperation agreement which has been renewed from time to time, and this agreement was signed in 2008 under the Prime Ministership of Manmohan Singh. Then we share these exercises like Zair al-Bahr. Now, this particular point can be a prelim pointer. It can be very well become a very good prelim questions in terms of war exercises, right? Now, what are the challenges? So, one of the challenges that came was derogatory references to Prophet on a TV show, and for which Qatar was the first country to seek a public apology from India. Now, in the backdrop, you must also see that why this commutation has happened and why this all started. So, there was an espionage case, but suddenly they were given death sentence. Why? Because this Israel-Palestine issue was burning. And here, the world was saying that India is on the sides of Israel. India is shifting its stance from a neutral stance towards more a Israeli point of view. And they are becoming good friends. Now, Palestinian issue is very serious for Qatar. It's very serious for Saudi Arabia. And at times, what happens if you do not want to play the big game, you ask a smaller boy to, go and hit the ball. So it might happen that this is a regional message. And from whom? From the hegemon, which is Saudi Arabia. So it's giving a message through Qatar that you have to keep your stance neutral in terms of Palestine, right? And so what happened is that recently there was a COP, conference of parties pertaining to climate change in Dubai, where our prime minister he met the head of state of Qatar, and after this, this particular judgment on appeal, the sentence was commuted, and therefore Qatar remains and will remain to be a very important player in the region, and therefore India will have to deal with all such underpinnings, such misgivings which happen in terms of diplomatic relations very softly and very carefully. Why? Because we want energy security, we want trade security, we want regional security, and we want a peaceful 2 to 3 decades of growth where all these sources of capital expenditure can invest in the Indian growth story while not compromise on our core interest. Our core interest, like Kashmir. Let's look at the Pegasus spyware. Now, this particular issue is a little complex issue. Why? Because we are dealing with a spyware. Now, what is the source? The source can be science and technology, right? But can I say this particular topic is only limited to science and technology? The answer is absolutely not. So it has to do with India's internal security. It will deal with, let's say, data. It will deal with privacy, which are again part of constitution. So the debates about Puttaswamy, the right of privacy, etc. They again. So this is a topic where a lot of things they intermerge, they merge together, and we will be looking at mostly the science and technology part, and we look at this entire spyware, this entire controversy, so that we know the story. But one thing that you can do is you can look at 1st of November analyst, where we discussed the right to privacy, and you can combine that debate with the Pegasus spyware debate and another debate that is about data protection. So these three debates will give you a very good content on any such issue which is, let's say, in India or around the world. Now, one particular question I have created that you can write down, and you can at least give me an introduction in the comments. Just an introduction, an apt introduction, a 3-line introduction will suffice. So how can advancement in technology be balanced with imperative of ensuring a robust data security and safeguarding individual privacy? So what this is a tech issue related to data and privacy in an increasingly interconnected and data driven society. So what is this? This is a digital economy, and we vie for a knowledge economy which is based upon digital infrastructure. So in this regard, what will be the stakes that we have? What will be the stakes that we'll have to give in terms of our data breaches? Right. Now, let's look at the background. So the Washington Post and Amnesty International report, it claimed that Pegasus spyware targeted Indian journalists in India. Now, this is the second time that Pegasus spyware is in news. So first time the story was broken. So the issue was that a lot of politicians, a lot of journalists, they got some inputs from their Apple devices, some notification from Apple devices that state-backed hackers, they are trying to access their information. And so Pegasus spyware, it came into news. Now again, what has happened? That the founder editor of The Wire and the South Asian editor of Organized Crime and Corruption Report Project, this is OCCRP. OCCRP. Now, at times, such organizations can be asked in prelims directly that this OCCRP is in news this this works in which of the following sectors, like that. Now, if you're looking at Pegasus, what is Pegasus? So it is a malicious software. This software has been developed in Israel for surveillance by NSO Group, and their modus operandi is a zero click. So usually what happens, that someone would send me a mail, a message, I will click on the link which through which they will steal my data, and gradually through such successive mails, through such phishing links, my data will be leaked, my passwords will be leaked. But here what is happening, these attacks are zero click attacks, zero click exploitations. So here there is no permission. So usually what happens, a app we install, and so it will ask for all the permissions. But what if there is no notification at all and the data is directly being relayed, it is directly being stolen? So that is something called a zero click exploit. So a zero click exploit refers to malicious software installed on a device without the owner's consent. There is absolutely no consent. And the moment the issue of consent comes, again the issue of fundamental right also comes, that without consent can you take away my data, can you breach my private data, right? And it also raises the issue of a surveillance state. Then, more importantly, it does not require the device owner to perform any actions to initiate or complete the installation of the software, the malicious software. Now, when you are looking at different kinds of cyber attack, we must understand what they will do. So, if you are looking at a malware, so they will cause damages like there will be ransomware, there will be spyware, there will be worms, there will be viruses, there will be trojans. Now, they will directly damage whatever software, the main software you have, and then they will perform different functions which are not intended to, like to ask for ransom, to lock your phone data and then ask for ransom, or to spy, or to just transmit the data. Then there is phishing. Phishing is, let's say I want to gather your personal information and send you a lot of messages, I'll call you, I'll send you mails, and the mails will have some different kind of pictures, some links, and you'll think you're booking a holiday, but instead you are directly giving your data. Then there is DOS attacks, that is denial of service, where I simply shut down your systems. Then you have man in the middle. So let's say you and I, we are transmitting some data, and that data is sensitive data, it is government data, and there is someone who is just someone who has become party to this transmission of data. So what will happen? This will lead to breach of confidentiality. Then there is SQL injection, where the servers are targeted, servers which stole the metadata, the critical data, they are attacked. Now, you must also know about OCCRP. Now, OCCRP is a civil society which is backed by George Soros, and this is related to the Open Society Foundation. Now, it is alleged that George Soros himself, who is known to short, he essentially tried to destroy the British pound. He played very big bets against the British pound and almost crippled governments. So George Soros is notorious in attacking governments. So he has created through philanthropic means Open Society Foundation, which funds OCCRP, and that is a global secret. It's a known secret. Now, multiple governments across the world, they have alleged that OCCRP is a political tool which has a political bias towards more liberal media, towards more liberal organization, and they also fund some left-wing organizations. That is something that has been alleged about OCCRP. Now, recently OCCRP has been in Indian news also. Why? Because it opened the Pegasus spyware issue, it opened the Panama paper issue, and then it also conducted research on the Adani group, it also conducted a research on India's Vedanta group. And so this was also called as the Hindenburg Part 2. Then George Soros himself also issued some statements on the Indian Prime Minister. Now, what are the steps taken to tackle any such spyware? So, we have the Cyber Surakshit Bharat initiative, which aims to raise awareness about cybercrime and enhance safety measures for government departments. Then we have the National Cyber Security Coordination Center, which is NCCC, and this scans internet traffic and communication metadata to detect real-time cyber threats. Then we have the Cyber Suraksha Kendra. This essentially gets rid of viruses and malware in the government devices. Then you have Indian Cyber Crime Coordination Center to coordinate all the activities in terms of cyber crime. Then you have the CERT-IN, you have the CERT-FIN, which are emergency response teams in terms of cyber attacks. Let's look at the third article, that is Ayushman Bharat scheme. Now, a question for you is Ayushman Bharat PM Jan Arogya Yojana, a healthcare initiative in India, primarily aims to. Now, let's look at what it does. So, it is the world's largest government finance health insurance, and it is part of the PM Jan Arogya Yojana. So it is one part of the Prime Minister Jan Arogya Yojana. Now, launched in 2018, it covers for rupees 5 lakh per family for both secondary and tertiary care. Now, when we are saying per family, we are essentially saying 5 lakh per person of the family per year. Now, it is a comprehensive health benefit package which includes surgery. It includes all daycare and medical treatments, and it includes medicine as well as diagnostics. The idea is to reduce the out of pocket expenditure. Then it is also about entitlement. Now, the beneficiaries, they will be identified from the SECC, that is the socio-economic caste census data. Now, the states also have a lot of flexibility. So, finally, who will execute such a policy? It is the state. That means, not the state, the states. That means, let's say Andhra Pradesh, let's say Meghalaya, they will be executing finally this scheme. So the state will have a lot of flexibility. Let's say there are some inclusion or exclusion errors in the database. Let's say the government of West Bengal thinks that there must be 200 more people who should be included under the Ayushman Bharat insurance. So based upon their own data, they can also modify the beneficiaries. So there is flexibility in beneficiary identification. And who is the nodal agency at the national level? It is the National Health Authority. It is NHA, which allows flexibility for states to use non-SEC beneficiary data with similar socio-economic profiles for tagging unauthenticated SECC families. And this will also help in terms of data updation when it comes to SECC. Then when we are looking at the funding structure, so it is 60-40 for majority of these states, but it is 90-10 for northeastern states, for Jammu and Kashmir, for Himachal Pradesh, for Uttarakhand. So essentially the Himalayan states and the northeastern states. Then we have the nodal agency called the National Health Authority, and we have the apex body called the State Health Agency at the state level, which will execute this project. Let's look at the Black Sea. Now, a bulk carrier hits mine in Black Sea, and Black Sea has been in news for last 2 years. Now, which of the following countries does not have a coastline along Black Sea? Turkey, Bulgaria, Romania, or Hungary? Please jot down your answers in the comments. Now, if you are looking at the Black Sea, you must look at the perspective of Black Sea in terms of the Russia-Ukraine issue. Secondly, you must look at a Black Sea as a trade region and as a choke point. And you must also look at the Black Sea as a gateway for Russia in terms of warm waters. So what happens is towards Western Europe, you have the North Atlantic drift current. This current will bring more hot water towards Western Europe, which will allow the ports to be operational throughout the winters. This does not happen to Russia in its east. So an opening and gateway towards the sea is necessary for Russia to sustain its economy and become part of the global trade. And we must also appreciate that Russian economy depends a lot on the export of oil and gas, and therefore it requires port to service all these exports. Now, about Black Sea, it borders country like Ukraine. So where is Ukraine? So this is your Ukraine. Then you have Russia. So this is your Russia. There you have Georgia. Here you have Turkey. Now Greece is nearby, but it does not borders the Black Sea. Then you have Romania, and you have the Sea of Marmara here. This becomes extremely important. Now when you are looking at Sea of Marmara, you will see two important straits. One is the Bosphorus Strait and the other is Dardanelles. These two straits become extremely important. Now in the middle is Sea of Marmara, and at the inside, from the inside it is Bosphorus Strait, and towards the exit, that means entry towards what? This is what? Mediterranean Sea. This is Black Sea. So if you want to come from Black Sea to Mediterranean Sea, you will first have to go through the Bosphorus Strait, then Sea of Marmara, then Dardanelles Strait. And which country is towards the south? Very important, Turkey. Now, one important thing about the Black Sea is that it has very limited oxygen levels. So its deeper waters have lower levels of oxygen due to its unique geological and hydrological conditions, and it creates a distinct environment and is one of the world's largest anoxic. What do you mean by anoxic? That means lack of oxygen. And when you have lack of oxygen, it will kill or it will not sustain life as such. That means the areas have very little dissolved oxygen and therefore will have limited carrying capacity. Let's look at the Red Sea. Now, which significant waterway connects the Red Sea to the Indian Ocean in the south? Now, here one important aspect is the straits. Straits and isthmus, they become extremely important for your CSE prelims, your UPSC CSE prelims. So if you want to look at some of the important straits, one is the choke point of Strait of Malacca, which is a very big headache for China, and that is why it wants to have alternative routes to the oil region of the world. Then you have Bab al Mandeb. Bab al Mandeb is in the Red Sea. Then you have Strait of Hormuz, and this is where? The Persian Gulf. What do you mean by Persia? Persia is Iran. Then you have multiple straits here. One of those is the Suez Canal. Now, let's look at the map to have a better understanding. So, if you start from here, you have the Suez Canal. Suez Canal is located where? In Egypt. Now, this narrow area is called the Gulf of Suez. Narrow area called Gulf of Suez. This particular narrow area is called the Gulf of Aqaba. Now, let me draw this so that we have a more clear idea. So, it is like this. This particular area is called the Sinai Peninsula. Sinai Peninsula. Why a peninsula? Because surrounded on three sides by water. This particular area, Gulf of Suez. This particular area, Gulf of Aqaba. Now, Gulf of Aqaba is the area from which Israel, it reaches out. It will reach out to what? It will reach out to the sea. Now, if you are looking at these straits, so this particular region, this narrow region is called the Bab al-Mandeb. And here you have the Gulf of Aden. And here you have Scotra Islands of Yemen. On the other hand, if you look at the Persian Gulf, this particular region is again the Strait of Hormuz. And if you are looking at Africa, so this is where you have the African Rift Valley, where you have multiple lakes. One of those lakes is Lake Tanganyika, right? So, the Red Sea is located between Africa and Asia. The water body is an inlet to the Indian Ocean. Then, known for its high salinity, ranking amongst the most saline bodies. And how does this salinity change? Because you are not getting what is this region? What is this region? Is it a desert region? So if you do not have fresh water flowing, if you do not have perennial rivers like Ganga there, so what will happen? You do not add fresh water in this area. Very little fresh water coming to Red Sea. So what will happen? Over the period of time, the salinity will increase. Now, who borders these countries? So Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Yemen, Sudan, Eritrea, Djibouti. Then it is connected to Indian Ocean in the south via Bab al-Mandeb and the Gulf of Aden. Then the northern boundary includes the Sinai Peninsula, the Gulf of Aqaba and the Gulf of Suez, leading to the Suez Canal. Then it occupies a special portion of the Great Rift Valley, especially the Afro-Arabian Rift Valley. Thank you so much. I hope it helped.